Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. This is Rusty and Heather Bryant, and we are the Redeemed Marriage. That's why we named our podcast the Redeemed Marriage.
Yes.
And
it's fitting.
Yes, it is fitting. Hey, what a great week it's been. We are about halfway through, really halfway through by the time you guys are listening to this. Halfway through our February prayer challenge. And it has been such an honor to pray for all of you. Why are you laughing?
Because I was like, we're halfway through the week. And I was like, they're listening to this on a Monday.
They have no idea. They don't know when we're recording this. Nothing.
You're right.
We don't either.
We don't. We normally do not record early, but we're recording early this week because we are going this weekend to visit our oldest son. So we're going to spend Valentine's Day in the car.
10 hours driving.
Yeah. So I hope your Valentine's Day.
We are so romantic like that.
We are. That's right. But we are going to see our oldest son. He's turning 23, and we are super excited to be able to spend a little time in North Carolina with him. And so we're recording this a little bit early. So I hope that you guys had a wonderful Valentine's, not in the car like we did, and that it was sweet and that you were reminded of your love for each other, and we're encouraged in that.
Yes. And, we've been praying for lots of marriages. Mm-hmm. We have tons of new listeners. So thank you. Really excited to welcome those of you that may have found us through Pine Lake Church after Pine Lake did our story last week. Mm-hmm. And so lots of new listeners, and we've been able to communicate with a lot of you through your prayer requests and also just through reaching out about other resources. So thank you for that, and it's great to have you a part of the Redeemed Marriage family. So, we've been praying for, I think it's now over 300 couples that are in our February prayer challenge. Yeah. And, we were even sitting at dinner tonight, and I made the comment and said, out of those 300, probably 290, maybe that was a little bit stretch, but probably close to that, are some really hard things.
Yeah.
Most of the prayer requests are... and look, we love the ones that are the marriages not necessarily in a rough spot. They just are asking for prayer or guidance, or, some of them have mentioned, a potential move or something for their kids, praying for their kids. So there's been some really cool ones, but most of them are just really, really hard. And I think that the message that I walk away from when I read all those is, first of all, if you're listening and you're like, man, like I am all alone, you are not alone. Yeah. And there are marriages, unfortunately, all over the world that are just really struggling. Yeah. And so, we're, probably even the majority, which is sad. But then on the flip side of that is just knowing how big God is and how pro-marriage He is, and He is for your marriage. And so we pray for these marriages, and we pray for healing, and we pray for restoration, and we just trust that God's going to do a miraculous work. Yeah. So in light of that, we are talking today about, you tell us the topic, Heather.
Well, I am so excited about this topic. One of the things that we have said often on here is that Rusty is a very detailed. When we plan a topic, he likes all the details and what the main point's going to be and what the little side points are going to be. And I just see the big picture. Well, I told him, I said, I have got a podcast topic that we have got to do. And he said, oh, great. What is it? And I just told him the big picture. And he was desperately trying to put trees to that forest that I see. And I sometimes think it's okay just to see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture that is so on my heart today, and probably because of the prayer requests that we have had come in, and that so many of them are so hard, is that God is big enough and can work a big miracle so that you can come out on the other side of whatever marriage crisis or hard spot in your marriage that you're walking through. You can come out stronger on the other side. We have so many people that come to us and say, like, how did you get to a spot that's even better than you were before? And it is literally only by God's grace that has happened, but it can be done. Like, our marriage now is 1,000,000 times better than it was before our marriage crisis. Like, before we walked through infidelity, our marriage is better now than it was then. And I think sometimes that when people are walking through the hard part, they're like, there's no way. They're like, you can't even see through to the other side, much less imagine it being better on the other side. So I was reading this book that I've been doing some. What's the name of it? The
Sacred Pathways.
Sacred Pathways. Just talks about all different ways that we connect to the Lord. And there was something in there that reminded me of this story. And I kind of have to tell the story to get to the point of our podcast today. Is that okay if I tell the story?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and I'm so great at that, and I never mess up any details. So if you need to correct me, please do.
Do I know what story this is?
Yes. I hope our youngest son doesn't matter us telling the story. So Logan, Luke's the oldest, Logan, when he was in high school, he's a freshman in college now, but when he was in high school, he played on a club team, and we were playing in Florida.
Soccer.
Yeah, but in Florida, right? Okay, so he was playing soccer in Florida, and these guys were big. I mean, they were big guys. And Logan was going for the ball, and this humongous kid, he had a beard. Like, I'm not kidding. He was a man. Knocked him over. I mean, just plowed over him. And Logan immediately stood up and said, I broke my collarbone. Like, there was no hesitation in his voice. He popped up and said, I broke my collarbone. And we were like, okay, like, come on. And some guys started going over to him, and then they started waving the coach on. And I was like, okay, something, we're in trouble. So Rusty takes off over there, which, there has to be something really wrong for Rusty to go over to a kid. Usually he's like, you're fine, get up. But he went over, and I was, shortly just right behind him. And I'm going to try, because some people listening may have weak stomachs, so I'm not going to be too graphic. But when he pulled down his shirt where his collarbone was, it was almost coming out of the skin. Like, you could see the bone poking underneath the skin. And we were like, yep, it's broken. And so, he was in severe pain. He, bless his heart, he's like his mama. When he's in severe pain, he wants to faint. Like, he was sitting there and went completely pale. And we were like, oh my gosh, we're fixing to lose him. And we got him to the car, and of course went to the ER, because we're how many hours from home?
It was about 5 hours.
Okay, so 5 hours from home. So we went to the ER, and, they said, sure enough, it's broken. They did an x-ray, which I thought was comical, but they did an x-ray, and they were like, yes, it's broken. And not just like a green stick break. It was broken completely in half, and was sticking almost out. So they said to us, you have two choices. You can wait here. This was a Sunday. They said, you can wait here until tomorrow and we'll, meet with an orthopedic and they'll do surgery. Or we can give you you can give him pain medicine and you can drive home and go to your doctor. Well, my sister and brother-in-law are both physical therapists, and they had strong opinions on who needed to do the surgery. And so we said, we're going home. So they drugged him up really good, told us to go back to the hotel. The doctor literally said, steal a pillow from the hotel and prop him up real good and go home. So we went back to the hotel. They had cut his jersey off of him and everything. So he's just shirtless. And we go back to the hotel. He stays in the car. We pack up all our stuff real quick, steal a pillow as we were told, tried to get him as comfortable as possible so he wasn't bouncing around. You sat in the back seat with him and I drove because you handle stuff like that way better than I do. So you sat back there with him and I was just thinking of all the things that we did to try to keep him comfortable. One of them was we went really, really slow.
Yeah.
Now, if
on the interstate.
Now, if there was a straightaway like the interstate and it was a good road, I'd try to, because we were trying to get home as fast as we could, but going slow. So I'd try to go a little bit faster. But on the interstate, even we were going slow. If there were roads that have bumpity bumps in them or potholes or any of that, we were going slow. I can remember coming out of the hotel parking lot and there was a bump down to the road. And it was just so slow. And people were honking at me. And they were frustrated and because they were like, what is going on with you? Like, just go. And so we, of course, the pain meds helped. We did the pillows. We just did everything we could to keep him comfortable. You would hold kind of his arm up at times just to make it less painful. So anyway, I was going to say long story short, but it's not short. So here's the summary of it. When we got back, we of course went the next day to see an orthopedic surgeon. He said, we're going to do this surgery right now. And we went straight over to the hospital and he got a plate put in. So it has 8 screws. And I'm talking, these aren't like little bitty screws. These are ginormous screws. And this golden plate, well, I don't know if it was gold. In my head, it was gold. But he has a plate.
I wonder if it's real gold. We might need to get in there.
It could be silver. I don't know. But he has a golden plate.
That's really fun. I've always thought it was a gold plate. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's not a gold plate, but whatever.
Okay, so they put the screws in there in the plate, and he has a massive scar that he thinks is really, really cool. Mm-hmm. He tells people he was attacked by a bear. So anyway, he, and he had to do some rehab, but not much.
Oh yeah. Well, no,
it was like
he did because he had to get range of motion back.
Yeah. But there was no risk of his arm. His collarbone breaking.
No.
Again. Mm-hmm. It was like, now you're fixed. Mm-hmm. You are secure. It's not going anywhere. But you're right. He had to get range of motion and things like that back. And it was, of course, sore and all of that. But I was thinking about that story while I was reading this book because it alluded to something like that. And I started thinking about how so many people are going through painful situations. Like, I think about Logan bouncing around in the back of that car and how much I was trying to protect him, but he was just hurting. Like really, really, really hurting. And I read these emails and these prayer requests from these people, and I'm like, there are a lot of people who are really hurting out there. And, there's so many things that we can do and people can do to try to ease the pain. You are, things like I did, trying to find a mentor, journeying with people, things like doing marriage coaching with us, prayer, going to church. I mean, like all of the things that you can do, counseling, all of those things that you try to make your marriage better, but you're just still in a lot of pain from really hard circumstances that you're in. And so I was thinking about how in these marriages that are suffering and that are really hurting, I just want to say to them that I promise you that you can get better, that God can work that miracle, and that you're not just going to come through limping, but you're going to come through and you can be stronger than you were before. Just like the doctor putting that golden plate in Logan's arm, is that, and you've heard a broken bone once healed is stronger than it was before, but it's true. And so our marriage is stronger now than it was before, but it's not because we didn't go through pain. We went through lots and lots of pain and lots of hurt. And, I think about all the things that we put into place to try to make him not hurt, and people honking at us and fussing at us and saying, go. And you may have other people that don't understand what you're going through, and give you a hard time or not very patient. But just knowing that you are crying out to the Lord and doing things and putting things into place to make sure that you're going to come out stronger on the other side.
But there's a lot of people, though, that I think can relate to the whole injury thing and how, when something happens with health, whether it's an injury or just, there's some sort of a health issue, and a doctor tells you, I need you to do this, and whether that's rehab or it's just some instructions that, it could be something with your diet, or, it could be anything, but people can relate to that because then they go and they do it, but they do it because they want to get better, and they know that if they do it, they will get better.
Right.
But the reason why they know that is because somebody that, has studied how to do it, and they're like, yes, if you do this, you're going to get better. It's going to be better. But then not only that, but I've been through rehab before, and you walk in those rehab rooms and there's a lot of people doing rehab, and there's people at all different stages, but there's people that you look at and you're like, oh man, I tore my ACL. And so I can look and I can see that person over there running on the treadmill, and they look great, and they tore their ACL. And so you see that and you're like, okay, I can get there. And then you hear the stories about, the athletes that come back and they're better and they're stronger. So you're seeing all this and you're like, oh yeah, and that's why you do it. That's why you're willing to go through that. Because, honestly, you don't have to fix. Some injuries don't even have to be fixed, but you choose to because you know that it will make you better, and you can come back better. Yeah. And so, and our marriages are the same way. You can see people that have been through hard things and they come out and they're stronger, and that's when you go, okay, yes, we can do that. Or you go to a counselor, or somebody that has some experience, or somebody that's lived through it, and they give you advice and tell you, hey, do these things, like we did this, do this. And if you do those things, then yes, you can get better. I think a big problem, though, for a lot of people, it's like with health issues and things, if you don't follow those instructions, well, guess what? You're not going to get better. You can't do nothing and get better. And it's the same with injuries and things. I think about like for a sports injury specifically, like you can have surgery and you can fix that injury so that it's fine. It's just fine though. But if you want to be stronger and you want to get back into playing shape and you want to be better than you were before, that's when you have to do the rehab and you have to work. And it's kind of like that with marriages too. You know, you can say, all right, well, let's just stay together and then do nothing.
Yeah.
And you can be married, but like, who wants to just be married?
Right.
You don't want to walk through the rest of your marriage with a limp.
Yeah.
You know, you want to repair it in such a way that you go back and you're like, man, that was a tough season and that was some hard rehab. But man, I'm so glad we did it because now look at where we are.
Right. What do you think are some things that, you know, people are listening and they're like, okay, I want to do the hard work. I want to be stronger than we were before. What are some things that people need to put into place that can ensure and have them working towards having a stronger marriage?
Well, you know, depending on what's happened to damage your marriage, I mean, that's a big part of it. And like, I don't know, one of the very first things that came to my mind was just boundaries, you know, because we always tell people that you have to, when there's trauma in your marriage, you have to get to a starting line.
Right.
There has to be this starting point. But you know, even in you watch a race, you know, at the Olympics, and there is a starting line, but there's a preparation to even get to the starting line. You know, even right before a race, you know, people they're stretching, they're you know, warming up, but they're not at the starting line, and then as it gets closer to time for the race, then they step up to the starting line and they get ready, and that's where they start from. And so there's stuff that goes on, obviously, behind the scenes. And so when we say there has to be a starting line, well, the way that you get to the starting line, we call them the S's, but the first S is that you stop doing what you're doing that's causing the trauma. So if there's some betrayal or some sort of mistrust, then you have to stop doing whatever that is. The second S is to sever it, and that means that you completely cut off the ties and you stop. You know, if it's a relationship or if it's something that you're doing or looking at or whatever, you stop doing. You completely sever it.
Just stop it.
Yeah, just stop it. Just stop it. And then you know, we say you draw a line in the sand where there's a real conversation where you both say, hey, this isn't happening anymore. And these are the consequences if it happens, you know, those type of really hard conversations.
Yeah.
But a part of that is, okay, we're drawing this line in the sand, and part of drawing the line in the sand is how do we protect ourselves from something like this never happening again. And so as you get to that starting line, you're putting all these boundaries in place, and like they're extreme. I mean, like if there's, you know, I just think about the people that we've had conversations with recently, and they're saying things that kind of led to the betrayal, and I'm like, man, I hope that like that can't
Never do that again.
Yeah, that can't be a part of your life anymore. Right. Like it has to be completely shut off. And those are the boundaries that you put in place. But I think that, you know, to answer that question, there needs to be, you know, boundaries that both of you understand.
Right.
And then from those boundaries, then you have to also start looking at like forgiveness and trust. And how do we start rebuilding trust again? Well, some of it starts with those boundaries, but then it's following those boundaries, and then it's being trustworthy and showing up every single day as being a trustworthy person. So what was the question that you asked me? I've just started to preach on all kinds of stuff now.
No,
but
I just was asking, what do people need to put into place to make sure that they can come out on the other side of this stronger than they were before?
Yeah.
And I mean, you crushed it with the beginning, making sure there's, you know, that you stop it, you sever it. You draw a line in the sand so that you can move forward. And in that, you have to have some pretty good boundaries, depending on what the pain is that you're going through. And I think it's super important to have somebody to journey with. I had a mentor that I heard you say today to somebody that besides Jesus, she is the one that helped us the most in, helping with me. So having a mentor or a counselor or somebody that you're journeying through this with. Of course, we offer, marriage coaching, which is our favorite thing to do, just journeying and walking with people. So just having people on your side, I was thinking just about Logan's story and the things we did to help along the journey and help along the way to ensure that he came out stronger, on the other side.
I think a lot of people that we talk to, they just, nobody knows. And
like it's in secret.
Yeah, everything's in secret, and they're just struggling through it, just the two of them, and there's just something powerful about having other people that are, like you said, journeying with you, but just know your story, and somebody that you've actually had to voice that to. And I also think that a lot of times when it's just you and your spouse, part of the reason why you're probably in the situation that you're in is because your communication is off and the communication is not good. And so a lot of times we'll sit down and we'll start talking to a couple and we'll ask a few questions, and pretty simple questions, but it's very clear that they don't even know what the other one's about to say, because they've never really talked about it. And I think that part of that is because, like I said, communication is off anyway. And I mean, communication is such a huge part of marriage. And so if you're not even able to talk to each other, then how in the world can you work through some of these things?
Right.
And so that's why it's good to have, and look, I mean, we know how it is too. If you're in the middle of something, it's really hard to ask the right questions to your spouse. And it's really hard for your spouse to be asked those questions and then actually respond to them, whether it's honestly or just, however the relationship communication component of it is so off that being able to get in front of somebody else and be able to open up and really share some feelings, it just really reveals a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way, in a really, really good way.
Yeah, and it brings things out so that you can deal with them. Yeah. And, I say that a lot, that it's so, so important to bring things into the light when things are, in darkness, and you're just trying to deal with it yourself or just you and your spouse. It's just something powerful about inviting someone else in that can, pray for you, but you have to be careful who you invite in, because you got to make sure it's somebody that is going to point you towards truth, point you towards Scripture, point you to what God's design for marriage is and His desire for marriage is, and not somebody that just will tell you what you want to hear, and that's important.
I think to wrap it up, one of the things that I was thinking about, just going back to the whole injury thing and getting some, instructions from a doctor or a therapist, physical therapist or whatever. If your doctor, tells you, let's say you've got some health issues, you go to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, I want you to do A, B, C, and D. And when you come back, we'll check everything again and see how you're doing. Well, you go home, you do it for a couple of days and you're like, I'm not doing that, or I don't have time, I'm too busy.
Or I feel better already.
Yeah, and you just don't do it. Well, then you go back and the doctor checks things. He's like, well, there's not really been any improvement. Why is it, are you doing all the things? Well, no, not really. Well, how do you,
why?
Why? Yeah, and don't you, first of all, don't you want to get better? But second of all, why would you not do the things that I told you to do if you know it's going to make you better?
Right.
And so then, I mean, we do the same thing in our marriage. Like we can hear all of these things. Hey, we need to work on these things. And maybe you hear it in a podcast. Maybe you read it in a book. Maybe you hear it in a sermon. Maybe you do go to counseling and your counselor tells you. Or maybe you've come to us and you've heard some marriage coaching and there's been some instructions. And then, you try it for a little bit and then it's like, and then you wonder 3 months later, you look at Rusty and Heather and you go, well, gosh, why can't we be thriving like that? Well, we didn't just wake up and get here.
Yeah.
And not only that, but I mean, we work on our marriage every single day. And I even remember today we were sitting down there and I even made some comment about, we teach people how to do this. So let's do what we teach people. And, but it's so true. It's not, you never stop paying attention to your marriage. And when you do, that's when the health issues are going to creep in. So, all right. Well, hey, we're going to let you guys go for this day, and we are so glad that you tuned in. We'd love for you to check out our website, and we've got some new stuff on there. Our marriage intensives is the brand new thing that we're offering. Also, if you're new to our podcast, we would love for you to give us a rating and a review because it helps more people to be able to get their eyes and ears on our podcast. So that would be great. All right. Till next time. Peace.
Peace.